teens owns Grub Cops.
The side of the road after the man, who we will Egg Harbor Police 28th, 2022. Corporal Michael Pritch of the Little Egg Harbor Police Department in Ocean County, New Jersey, stopped his vehicle and approached a young man who was walking on the side of the road after the man, who we will refer to as Mr. Walker, gave the finger to Corporal Pritch. The interaction was captured on Corporal Pritch's body-worn camera.
Why you giving me the finger?
What?
What's your problem?
What?
Why you giving me the finger?
Yes, she is brushing and streaming to see
Am I free to go?
Why you giving me the finger?
Am I free to go?
No. Come
For
here.
what reason?
Why you giving me the finger?
Why he's allowed
Am I
to?
free to go?
No.
What, do you have a problem?
No.
You have a problem?
No.
You don't have a problem, then I can leave.
Why you giving me the finger when you're walking? Huh?
Well, no, he's allowed to. It's a thing. It's a law thing.
What?
Get over here.
Is that a lawful order?
Yeah.
For what reason?
Because you're giving me the finger.
Oh, wait a minute, this guy's smart. Damn, chat.
What
I usually I hate these guys that are being annoying to cops, or whatever. But this guy's not only right, he's actually kind of smart about it. Just kind of annoys me a little bit.
What's the law?
What's your
What's
name?
the law?
What's your name? How old are you?
Corporal Pritch claims that it is illegal to give him the finger, and therefore he can lawfully detain Mr. Walker for doing so. As we have discussed before on ATA, the Supreme Court held in the 1970s...
I'm not saying it's smart to somebody off, I'm just saying that it's fine, and if he says, is that a lawful order to stop, and the guy says yes, and the cop's already wrong.
One case of Cohen versus California that, quote, absent a more particularized and compelling reason for its actions, the state may not, consistently with the First and 14th Amendments, make the simple public display here involved of this single four-letter expletive a criminal offense. Likewise, as the Supreme Court explained in the 1989 case of Texas versus Johnson, while, quote, the First Amendment literally forbids the abridgment only of speech, its protection does not end at the spoken or written word. Conduct may be sufficiently imbued with elements of communication to fall within the scope of the First and 14th Amendments. The court also stated that, quote, in deciding whether particular conduct possesses sufficient communicative elements to bring the First Amendment into play, we have asked whether an intent to convey a particularized message was present, and whether the likelihood was great that the message would be understood by those who viewed it. Although the Supreme Court has not ruled specifically as to whether raising a middle finger constitutes protected speech, the gesture nearly inarguably satisfies the test for expressive conduct outlined in Texas versus Johnson, and courts that have reviewed the issue have generally concluded that it is protected speech. In the 2006 case of Corey versus Nason, the U.S. District Court in the Western District of Pennsylvania, which is in the same federal circuit as New Jersey, concluded that, quote, the weight of federal authority establishes that directing the middle finger at a police officer is protected expression under the First Amendment, absent some particularized showing that the gesture in the specific factual context constitutes fighting words or is otherwise illegal. According to Section 2C 33-2,
oh my God, I know, we know,
given this precedent, it is highly likely that a court reviewing this situation would determine that Mr. Walker's use of the middle finger was protected speech, and that he could not be arrested under the disorderly conduct statute for directing the gesture at Corporal Pritch.
Have a good one.
Whatever. What?
You heard me.
Come here.
I'm afraid of you.
Come here. Get over here.
What?
Get over here.
I'm not doing anything illegal.
Yeah, you are. You just cursed me off.
That's not a crime.
Yes, it is.
Says who?
Says me.
Says who?
Turn around. Come on.
Bro, that is not a crime.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Why are you cursing me?
It's not a crime.
What's your name?
It's not a crime.
What's your name?
Help! Help!
No help.
Help! Help!
Yo.
Help!
Corporal Pritch grabs Mr. Walker and holds him with his hands behind his back. When Mr. Walker starts screaming for help, Corporal Pritch turns off his body-worn camera and does not turn it back on until backup arrives. Under Section 40A 14-118.3 of the New Jersey statutes, every uniformed law enforcement officer is required to wear a body-worn camera that electronically records audio and video while acting in the performance of their official duties, with limited exceptions. Additionally, Section 40A 14-118.5 states that, quote, the video and audio recording functions of a body-worn camera shall be activated whenever the officer is responding to a call for service or at the initiation of...
You know what's cringe too? Is that it's the people that pay for this shit, right? Isn't it literally the people with their taxes that pay for these cameras and shit like that? For them to serve the people better, and for the police to do VOD reviews of their own officers so they can learn how to serve the public better. You're paying for this shit, and it's being
any
used
other
against
law
you.
enforcement or investigative
Cringe
encounter
ass
between an
fucking
officer
country.
and a member of the public.
xQc.
Fucking
And,
dog
quote,
shit
the
ass
body-worn
country.
camera
Wait, what's that
shall
point? I mean,
remain
it's
activated
disgusting.
until the encounter has fully concluded and the officer leaves the scene. Likewise, the statute only allows for the
You say VOD review, but it's true though. You're literally, it's almost like you're paying a coach to be better at a game. The guy does everything he can to make sure you're worse. It's like, what?
activation of a body-worn camera during an encounter. Quote, when a civilian conversing with the officer requests that the device be deactivated where it reasonably appears that the person will not provide information or otherwise cooperate with the officer unless that request
Has used against you because there's nothing, any information that you have that you're literally deleting evidence pretty much, right? If you were to go to the court of law, right? Because officers are not always right. You as a citizen,
Did you pull me over him not driving any?
The way it's being used against you is that this would be the way you would win is that the cop, the guy that knows better, is filming. You're deleting evidence, literally. That's
respected
that's
when a
against you.
person other than an arrestee is seeking emergency medical services for themselves or another person and requests that the device be deactivated while the officer is participating in a discussion pertaining to criminal investigation strategy and planning, or when specifically authorized to do so by an assistant prosecutor or an assistant or deputy attorney general for good and sufficient cause. These legal requirements are expanded upon in the body-worn camera policy issued by the Office of the Attorney General for the state of New Jersey, and it is clear that Corporal Pritch's actions in turning off the body-worn camera violated both state law and the Attorney General's policy.
I'm under arrest right now because I was cursing at him. And he said,
You're being detained because you're acting strange.
what? That's not legal.
It is legal. He's allowed to
Who is
detain
this
you
kid?
until he performs his
So what am I
investigation.
doing though? What am I doing that made him detain me? What legal
Every
right?
time I rode by him twice, he shot me the finger. So I turned around and said, "What you?"
Is that a crime?
No problem.
Hold
Then
on
he
a
tells
second.
me
That's not a
This is
crime.
causing public disturbance.
Then he
That's
tells
not,
me to.
no, that's not a
Turn
crime.
F off, pig.
Yeah, off, big. That's not a crime. That's not a crime. He's looking at you because he's like, what the fuck you want me to do? Because it's not a crime. I know my rights.
Who are you?
I don't have to say
He
anything.
doesn't say anything,
You
yeah.
do if you're being detained.
For what reason?
That's okay.
What legal reason
So
am I being
dumb.
detained for?
Where are you coming from and where are you?
What legal reason am I being detained for? I need to know that. Legally, I need to know that.
Patrolman Michael James Lamontagne arrives on the scene and
Lamont.
informs Mr. Walker that he is required to identify himself because he is being detained, even though he cannot provide a legal justification for the detention. However, New Jersey does not have a stop and identify statute that specifically requires Mr. Walker to identify himself, and courts have determined that New Jersey's
New
obstruction
Jersey.
statute cannot be applied to individuals who refuse to identify themselves to police officers when they are not suspected of committing a motor vehicle offense. Under Section 2C
that your
29-1
state?
of the New Jersey
Unlucky.
Code, quote, a person commits an offense if he purposely obstructs, impairs, or perverts the administration of law or other governmental function, or prevents or attempts to prevent a public servant from lawfully performing an official function by means of flight, intimidation, force, violence, or physical.
Makes sense.
Mr. Walker was required to identify himself.
Why are you?
Shooting me the finger.
Why are you?
Is that illegal?
Why are you
Cursing at
flipping the bird? Yes, it is. When you are cursing in public, you are causing a public disturbance. You're being a nuisance to the public.
In what way? When he was driving past? Well, I'd like to see you guys prove it in court.
It's called causing a public disturbance.
I know
okay,
the law.
by being a nuisance.
I know the
okay?
law.
I'm not saying you're being charged with anything. At that
I'm
point,
just
he's
figuring out
detaining
what's wrong with you.
to make
What's
sure that
going
there
on?
is nothing
Make
wrong.
sure you're okay.
What
Make sure that
reason,
you're okay.
What reason does he need to detain me?
He thought maybe he thought you were signaling him down. Were you
I was.
signaling to him?
No,
Listen, I was
no,
just-
you knew very well that I wasn't signaling to you, right? I wasn't signaling
Well,
to you.
you bring attention to yourself.
That's not signaling.
You're acting strange. I'm making sure you're okay.
Dude, that's so funny. Like, you're not here for my safety. You're not trying to protect
How do
me.
you know?
You're walking
may
on the
be-
side of the road and you're cursing and you're flipping the bird.
Once at him. I gave him the finger once. That
you know
will
him?
not hold
Do
up.
you know him? Do you know him?
It's not your business. I
It is
plead the
my
fifth.
business.
I plead the fifth then.
It's
What's the
your public
First
law.
Amendment for?
Okay. The First Amendment is for your freedom of speech. Okay.
Okay.
What does that have to do with
Was I
using
making a call to
gestures?
action? Am I calling for an action to be done against you?
Do
No.
you understand
You're
that
bringing
it is?
attention to
Listen,
yourself and
listen,
getting
listen, listen.
That's not legal.
It's behavior that's out of the ordinary. Clearly, if you stopped all the way back there, I'm assuming you guys were back there and you just
We
continued
were
to
back
walk.
a bit further
And you
back.
just
And you
continued
ran
to
away
walk.
from me.
I wasn't running. I was walking.
Once he
So
gives an order
let's
for you
be
to
honest
stop, you're supposed to stop.
here. I did stop when he originally said it, but I was asking, is it
And then he
illegal?
told me
Is it
to
a
F
lawful?
off, and he took off.
Yeah, because I kept walking because you weren't pursuing at the first. You
All
only
right.
started pursuing because I
So
said. you big. That's when you got a little upset.
We're here at this point now, okay? You've brought the attention to yourself. You've caused the public alarm.
Well, I'd like to see you legally hold that in court, because
I'm not charging you with anything, so I don't legally need to hold anything in court.
Well, I want to know from your perspective.
The kid is not smooth brain, okay? Okay. Out of all people who bait cops, whatever, I think doing the finger, it's not even baiting a cop though. You would only be baiting it bad cops by doing that. Literally, it's like, yeah, you're baiting it, but you're only baiting the bad cops because most of them know not to give a fuck about that.
So you tell me what you were
simple
doing.
Concept. It's so simple.
You idiot. How long have you been a cop? 6?
Longer than you.
Listen.
Longer than you? I'm not a cop.
I don't understand what the point of this is.
I'm walking. That's what I'm doing.
Okay.
It's the 4th Amendment to be allowed to walk without seizures or anything like that.
You sure?
Yes.
Are you sure that's the 4th Amendment? You
You want to bet money on it?
You sure that's what the 4th Amendment? It gives you the right to walk without seizure. What's going to be seizured while you're walking?
My body, my person, idiot. You were about to. He said I was going to be under arrest.
He said you were detained.
I said stop.
You said you were detained.
Be arrested.
So now what happens?
So
now what happens?
He just admitted that he was going to arrest me.
He gives you a lawful order to stop, and you do not stop.
It wasn't a lawful order, though.
And you do not stop.
It legally was not a lawful order.
You do not stop, then that becomes a criminal offense, and then yes, you can be put under
But
arrest.
it's not a lawful order. Then I take it to court, and then he'd get sued, and I get punitive damages. I'd be rich.
He's not gonna get rich, but this is where he's kind of wrong though, is that even though the cop is wrong about the lawful order, it's still a lawful order. If he wants to go battle in court afterwards, then he wins. But it's true though. If the order is trash, you still have to. That's how it is though. That's how it is.
You don't know the law.
That may be what happens.
You don't know the law.
That's going to happen.
Patrolman Lamong Tang claims that the 4th Amendment was...
This is sad but true. Yes, I'm right. It makes an order, okay, and it has no justification for it, right? And you don't go according to it, then you get clapped. But yeah, you said when in court, you just fight in court.
Not implicated in this interaction because no seizure occurred and
Mr.
Walker was not placed under arrest. However, as the Supreme Court explained in the infamous 1968 case of Terry versus Ohio, quote, the 4th Amendment provides that the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. This inestimable right of personal security belongs as much to the citizen on the streets of our cities as to the homeowner closeted in his study to dispose of his secret affairs. For, as this court has always recognized, no right is held more sacred or is more carefully guarded by the common law than the right of every individual to the possession and control of his own person, free from all restraint or interference of others, unless by clear and unquestionable
I want to see if he's going to say I'm right or not.
Authority of law. Based on this principle, the court determined that, quote, it is quite plain that the 4th Amendment governs seizures of the person which do not eventuate in a trip to the station house and prosecution for crime. Arrests, in traditional terminology.
Yo, Kai, did you enjoy Overwatch or not? You said Overwatch. Was it nice? You enjoyed it?
It must be recognized that whenever a police officer accosts an individual and restrains his freedom to walk away, he has seized that person. Building on this decision, the Supreme Court held in the 1980 case of United States versus Mendenhall that, quote, a person has been seized within the meaning of the 4th Amendment only if, in view of all of the circumstances surrounding the incident, a reasonable person would have believed that he was not free to leave. Undeniable that Mr. Walker was seized when Corporal Pritch initiated physical contact with Mr. Walker to prevent him from leaving. However, it is also highly probable that a court would conclude Mr. Walker was seized for 4th Amendment purposes when Corporal Pritch first ordered him to stop, and he complied.
It may be what's going to happen. It may not be what happens. Okay?
Okay, I understand.
What may happen is
all right, so what are we wasting time for?
Jury,
Am I free to go?
What may happen is you may get a normal jury. No, because at this point you were detained, okay, because he told you to stop and you didn't stop.
Okay.
So therefore, you need to identify yourself as a part of the investigation. So what is your name?
Okay, I'm going to need all of your badge numbers.
I will give you everything written down on a card. What is your name?
I can give you...
If you have an ID, that's perfect.
Okay, I'll take it to court because this is still a detainment.
Are you a juvenile?
This is an illegal detainment,
Are you
so
a
I can
juvenile?
still... I'm not going to answer that.
You have to answer.
Why?
Interesting.
Because you're being detained.
I said I'll give you my ID, buddy. He's such a pig, bro.
So what does that make you?
Not a pig. Dude, this is illegal. You'll legally have to prove that I was a nuisance to the public. How will you do that? How will you do that? I just want to hear
camera systems. Okay, so when he goes by in the car, okay, and he sees you doing what you're doing,
and what was I doing?
Going to be there.
And what part of that caused the disturbance? That's what I'm trying to legally understand. I don't understand. Is that a body camera?
That's what it is.
Perfect. Tuckerton doesn't have them. You know that? Tuckerton's been on back order for months. Because I have a lawsuit against them. That's why. And I wish they'd have body cams. I would love if they had body cams. Take out the bad cops.
It's for all of us.
Right.
It's for all of us. It's for everybody that's involved in the situation. Okay?
Appreciate it.
If you have any problems or anything, and you want to come down, you want to talk to somebody, our supervisors are always there as well. Okay?
Well, I'm going to take a lawsuit. So who would I press criminal charges against? For what?
You're gonna have to. You're gonna have to call. You're gonna have to call and figure that out with a lawyer. You would have to file a complaint with the courts.
Got it.
Okay, and then you can go from there if you want to see if you can press charges and
Hassan
whatnot for violating your rights.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Stay out of the
Am I
roadway,
free to go?
Don't give us fingers.
Shut the f up.
Stay out of the roadway. Stop causing a public alarm.
Dude, shut the f up. Am I free to go?
Cursing.
Am I
You're free to go.
Stop cursing. Go.
You're free to go.
After Patrolman Lamontang informed Mr. Walker that he was free to go, Mr. Walker directed a profanity at both of the officers and walked away without any further incident. Very little information is available about this interaction, and although Mr. Walker informed the officers of his intent to pursue legal action, it is unknown whether he has taken any steps to do so.
Also, Chad, it's funny you guys say lawful order type shit earlier. What happens when he says that? Don't cruise at me or stop cruising at me. Is that a lawful order or not? Like it's
overall, Corporal Pritch
weird.
and Patrolman Lamontang get an F for acting with total disregard to Mr. Walker's First Amendment and Fourth Amendment rights, detaining him without reasonable suspicion to do so, and blatantly misstating the law multiple times throughout the encounter. The officers repeatedly demonstrated their complete ignorance of some of the most essential legal principles that apply to law enforcement officers by falsely claiming that it was illegal for Mr. Walker to use profanity and display his middle finger, that Mr. Walker was legally required to identify himself, and that their illegal detention of Mr. Walker did not violate the Fourth Amendment, or even implicate it because he was not formally arrested.
What does he get?
Not legally required to do so. He demonstrated a strong understanding of his constitutional rights, stood up to the officers when they repeatedly misstated the law, and even attempted to educate the officers about the constitutional rights of citizens when they revealed their ignorance. While Mr. Walker maintained a hostile demeanor with the officers and used some inflammatory language, he was well within his First Amendment rights to do so, and I would encourage him to follow through on his intentions of filing a lawsuit against these officers for their illegal and unconstitutional actions. I commend Mr. Walker for taking an interest in constitutional rights at such a young age, and this interaction perfectly demonstrates how useful this knowledge can be for young adults across the country.
My thing is this. Yeah, you can't blame you getting drunk for these girls taking